For as long as mankind existed, they've dreamt of fantasy worlds and various monsters, but none are quite iconic as the dragon. So which of gaming's most famous dragons, that technically aren't dragons, would win in a fight to the death? Charizard, the flame Pokemon, Rathalos, the fire wyvern. I am Nome, and I am here to analyze their powers, techniques, and experience to figure out who wins. Welcome one and all to the wonderful world of Pokemon. From the land to the sea, from the sky to even outer space, forged by the mythical Pokemon Arceus, this world is filled with the most wondrous creatures and regions where humans and Pokemon coexist. There are the bustling cities of Unova, the wondrous cultures of Alola, the nothingness that is Johto, and most iconic of them all is the Kanto region. This is where Red comes in. Only at 10 years old, he was ready to take on the challenge to be the very best like no one ever was. The Pokemon champion. But he will need a partner for his journey, and had 3 choices for his starter Pokemon. To match his red-hot fire passion, he chose the fire-type Charmander. After struggling against the first gym because the fire is very bad against Brock, he was able to overcome the challenge and eventually evolve Charmander into Charmeleon, which are very hot-headed and always looking for a challenge. And to complete the set and evolve past his teenage years, Red evolved Charmeleon into the Game Freak's resident cash cow, Charizard. One of the most powerful starter Pokemon with a very notable weakness across his entire evolutionary line. If the fire on his tail ever goes out, it dies immediately. Although this weakness isn't half as bad as you might think. Charmanders have survived very long heavy rainstorms without their tails going out, and Charizard can survive being entirely submerged in water, so nothing's putting out this dragon's roaring flame easily. And a roaring flame is very accurate too. Charizard has plenty of moves to burn you to cinders, like its iconic flamethrower, the mega powerful blast burn, the physically powerful flare blitz, and the extremely cool fire blast. Being a fire type actually gives Charizard the same type attack bonus or stab to his fire move, but also his part flying type, so like wing attack, air slash, aerial ace, and fly also get a big bonus. Charizard has torn its way through several Pokemon, such as Magneton. It doesn't look like much at first, but it can increase its heat to such a degree it would equate over 860 tons of TNT. Then there's Golem, which can dodge lasers at half the speed of light. And Charizard is certainly faster than a big sentient rock. It might sound crazy, but it's pretty standard affair for Pokemon. But Charizard can't just rely on its fire and flying type moves to keep up with the other Pokemon. Luckily, Charizard has moves of other types to help out. Dynamic Punch, Seismic Toss, Smoke Screen, Dragon and Sword stances, which increases Charizard's power and speed. Then there's the devastating Dragon Pulse and a Dragon and Metal Claws, which are perfect for close quarters combat. Charizard can also create sandstorms, fissures in the ground, closed with double team, like barriers to protect and reflect, injure any attack even if it would knock out Charizard at first, create unavoidable star projectiles with Swift, and so much more. With all this, you expect Charizard to be unstoppable, but you'll be wrong. There are plenty of Pokemon out there able to show it up, and Charizard lives for it, actively refusing to fight weaker opponents and only fighting foes those that are stronger than it, or at least to a similar enough level. But in order to keep up, both Red and Charizard needed to grow stronger. Their bonds needed to intertwine within the borders of Kalos region. There exists a phenomenon only the strongest bonds can master. Other Pokemon have their jaws smashed, bodies melted, energy surged to the point of painful mutilation, but it is worth it since through the bond of human and Pokemon, the pain is negligible when it comes to Mega Evolution. Thanks to Legend ZA, we now know that while the Pokemon can access these forms, so fair game to give Charizard its 2 Mega Evolutions, Mega Charizard Y and Mega Charizard X, which is actually a dragon this time. These forms drastically increases Charizard's strength, and just by existing, it's enough to cause a massive drought, very similar to another Pokemon's ability, Abomasnow. Once a random Abomasnow once created a massive hailstorm that covered an entire town of Dendemel, which required an energy worth over 4 gigatons of TNT, which Charizard is far stronger even in base form, let alone the massive power boost of X and Y provides. And when Mega Charizard X shed his flying type, we finally get the Stab Dragon that always wanted. Right in the generation when Dragon Killers were introduced. That's a bummer. And it's not the only super form Charizard has, but it shows that the bond between the trainer and its Pokémon is far more than master and owner. No wonder why many slate Charizard as their favorite Pokémon. Who wouldn't want to ride the back of a fire-breathing dragon, despite its height in its mind? Which is still weird to think about. Despite the setback, Charizard's power is clear. It is no surprise where several famous trainers have used it to its fullest effect. Trainers like Ash, Trevor, Alan, and Leon, and of course Red, whose bond with Charizard allowed the two to take on the Mafia boss, defeated all the gym leaders, defeated Red's rival Blue despite the type advantage, defeated Mewtwo, and most of all, became the most famous champion in the world. Resting atop of a mountain peak, the duo will overcome any shortcoming, even if they're knocked out, beaten or battered. As long as a single ember within their soul exists, they'll turn that ember into a raging inferno, no matter the challenge in front of them. Imagine a dangerous world with humanity in a constant struggle against enormous kaiju monsters that they must harvest in order to create the necessary weapons to take them out. Though across various continents such as Arkalos, the mysterious Aya, and the long-forgotten Fonron, one monster reigns in iconic infamy, the King of the Skies, Rathalos. Being the King of the Skies is an understatement. Rathalos is over 170 feet long, with a wingspan even greater. Taking a Rathalos down is considered a great achievement for a hunter. However, it's not so easily achieved. Assuming it doesn't blow you up with its burning fireballs or break every bone in your body with its ankylosaurus-like tail. It is basically a master at controlling the skies. Catching it is nearly impossible, though some monsters like Ocelos can catch up to it and even tackle it to the ground, flying around 1,500 meters per second. That speed's over 4 times faster than the speed of sound, so good luck. Beyond how fast it can go, the Rathalos species has a frankly fascinating physiology. While it's known for being a dragon, it's actually a pure fire element, and is in fact weak to dragon elemental, as well as ice, water, and thunder elements. Even still, its tough armor-like shell is perfect for defense and makes it incredibly tough. It sacrifices no ability or intelligence, and its fire breath doesn't come from some magic but rather a fire sign that allows for the intense heat it produces. It doesn't just create fire columns, bite you with fire, and even spread flames all around before erupting into a massive explosion with its fire waves techniques, but its fires are last thing you'll have to worry about. Its roar can cause a poor soul to be stuck in place by being affected with stun. The most terrifying part of Rathalos is its talents. Not only it can rip you apart in seconds, but even if you do live, you'll be poisoned. It slowly kills you and stacks with every single infliction, causing more and more pain. They don't just do this to humans. Rathalos are very territorial, rarely ever letting any other being into their territory, fighting in any and all monsters that come into contact, and are likely stronger than monsters like the Lagia Cruz, which smashed a giant pillar worth over 13 tons of TNT, only do so to attract a mate with their female counterparts, Rathians, but even then they'll still fight them if they feel like it. This is very impressive since Rathians can match the Kushala Dayora, and one of them is powerful enough to part a giant snowstorm with just a flap of its wings. Disperse a snowstorm that spanned for miles worth nearly 5 gigatons of TNT. It's no wonder they're the king of the skies. While they're also known for that, they're far from perfect. They might be powerful, but believe it or not, they're actually one of the weakest versions of Rathalos species. There's the HC Silver Rathalos, the Dread King Rathalos, the Zenith Rathalos, the Zarusu, and Rathalos, but except it's on fire. And of course, it's been studied by humans to properly take it out. Cutting damage to the face is the most effective option, so it's no wonder why several hunters have been able to take it out, and use its body to create various other weapons to take out even more ridiculous monsters. But to be fair, a lot of those weapons are really cool. Despite this, and there being like 12 goddamn versions of the behemoth, it's iconic for a reason, since its orange and black scales and devastating roar will be the last thing you'll ever see and hear if you shred into its territory unprepared. But also, even with their aggressive nature, some humans were able to somehow tame it and ride them, and that's really cool to say at least. Even that exception though, if you find yourself within the Rathalos nest, Say your prayers, because these terrible wyverns will descend onto travelers from the sky, attacking with their claws of poison and their breaths of fire.
Step right up, get your parlays in, because it is time to figure out who would win.
Someone should probably call Smokey the Bear for this one. This matchup was interesting to look at, which is why I'm breaking it down into 4 of the most relevant categories, starting with intelligence. While Charizard typically has a decent amount of experience, their fighting style boils down to just hitting what's in front of them really hard. On the flip side, Rathalos has some genuine strategies and fights way more dangerous monsters on a regular basis compared to Charizard, who usually isn't at a risk of dying in any given fight. Rathalos easily takes an edge here. Speed was a very different story. While Rathalos can compare to other monsters like Ocelots, who once tackled Rathalos at over Mach 4, Charizard was much faster. Comparing to Golem dodging light beams, this makes Charizard over 103,000 times faster than Rathalos, a frankly absurd difference that Rathalos has no hope in keeping up with. Couple that with Charizard much more size and make it very difficult for Rathalos to land solid hits on Charizard, and it's a fairly obvious advantage. But when Rathalos does eventually land its hit attacks, would they even matter? Power is a massive category here. While both non-dragons come from very different worlds, some of their best feats they compare to involve snowstorms, one parting it and one creating it, and both got to relatively similar ranges. though when properly looked at, Rathalos had a very slight advantage of 4.9 gigatons versus 4.3. A very small difference, but just enough to make Rathalos gain the edge, right? Well, another thing to consider is Charizard's Mega Evolution, specifically Mega Charizard Y, which provides a 1.4 times increase to Charizard's special attack, which can be used to increase Charizard's power output from 4.3 gigatons to 6.3 gigatons, flipping the power advantage on Rathalos' head. Though then again, this is just in Mega Y, and likely doesn't compare to Charizard's durability as much. Plus, you could interpret both feats in different ways to increase or decrease the numbers, but ultimately, they're always going to be in a relatively even enough to call this category a tie, meaning the deciding factor for this was abilities. So Rathalos is really cool, flight, armor, fire, all really nice. The only thing that can pose a threat to Charizard is the poison, which is something Charizard could technically do to Rathalos. Yeah, while Rathalos had some powers, Charizard matched and countered basically everything he had. He had more fire moves, better aerial maneuverability, and could generate entire force fields to protect itself far more effectively than Rathalos' armor, and that's ignoring game changers like Swords and Dragon Dance. Which, just using a few of those, Charizard could more than exceed Rathalos in power, and given Charizard's vastly superior speed, it could definitely set up safely before Rathalos had the time to hit it. Not to mention, some of Charizard's trickier powers like Smokescreen and Double Team, Rathalos had never dealt with something like that before. But perhaps more importantly was Charizard X becoming a Dragon type, and Rathalos is specifically weak to Dragon moves. So everything in place, Rathalos will be taking massive amount of damage like Dragon Claw and Dragon Pulse, while Rathalos had trouble even hitting Charizard in the first place. How it was fitting that the Battle of the Dragons, the real dragon triumphs over the wyvern. The winner is Charizard.
She said, "You think the devil has horns? Well, so did I. But I was wrong, his hair is combed and he wears a suit and tie. He's nice.